You are listening to the Beyond the High Road podcast with Shelby Milford, episode number 83.
Welcome to Beyond the High Road, a podcast dedicated to healing your heart and life following the grief of alienation. I'm your host, Shelby Milford, a twice certified life coach with an advanced certification in post-traumatic growth and grief. Using proven concepts based heavily in neuroscience and psychology, I developed my own playbook for reintegrating with life and reframing my role as my daughter's mother, even while living apart. I went from feeling agonized, helpless, and directionless to feeling energized, confident, and most importantly, at peace. Today, I get to help other parents like you to do the same. Stay tuned.
Hey, you guys. How are we doing today? So after letting go of last week's episode, I dropped it, released it on Wednesday night. And moments later, I received a message, an Instagram message from one of two of my favorite attorneys who ever represented me. And I will say it that way because there is a collection of them over the years. I mean, funny, not funny. But ones I hold dear to my heart and I respect greatly. They were my first two attorneys, really. It was my first attorney ever, which I will give him a shout out here in Austin, Texas, which is Jonathan Friday. And then the next attorney, who is Lisa Londegren. I spent many, many hours in their offices, both of them separately, listening to them giving me counsel and words to the wise back in the day, like what not to do, what to watch out for, how to conduct myself outside of the courtroom, don't dance on bars, for instance, and what have you. So those two attorneys, to this day, I super respect them. They're amazing. And so every so often, now and again, I will get some correspondence from one of the attorneys. Back in December, she had sent me a message saying that she found anecdotally that reunification therapy does not work. She uses family systems therapy instead. I passed that along to a few of my clients at the time, and it was something that helped greatly. But then, of course, when I was recording last week, I completely forgot. I realized, too, that I just told you all the bad things about reunification therapy, and that's some of the good, too. But never offered you up an alternative. So there you have it, family systems theory and family systems therapy. It seems to be the way to go. So I wanted to pass that along to you guys. But also, last week she sent me a book and a couple articles about when a child resists or refuses to go to the targeted parent's house, and a book called Mending Fences, which I will be honest, I have not read yet because it's not on Audible. I listen to books, so I haven't read it yet. I haven't taken the time to actually put my eyes on the pages. I really do like to read to books while doing other stuff, as I'm sure many of you do. But I also do appreciate the depth that you gain by actually doing the reading with your eyes. Having said that, the book is called Mending Fences, a collaborative cognitive behavioral reunification protocol serving the best interest of the post-divorce polarized child. And it's by Benjamin Garber. So it's just a recommendation for anybody who's interested. So yeah, there's that. Her message got me thinking, and actually just the message about family systems got me thinking. I have been, I don't want to say avoiding, but putting off addressing the topic of forgiveness with you guys for some time. And that is because, for a few reasons, really. One is because I haven't fully completed the work to forgive one of the people involved in the alienation. I'm not going to go into detail about that part so much right now, but I will say I'm getting closer to that. And the other reason is probably obvious, is because many of you, I am sure, are resisting this step in your healing. Maybe some of you have already forgiven. And if that's the case, I'd love to hear from you. So we are going to talk about resentment and forgiveness today. But I want to preface this by letting you know right now that if you're not ready, that is okay. Not being ready is an essential part of your readying. You know what I'm saying? Not being ready to forgive that's your journey. This is part of your walk. I don't believe that true forgiveness, like deep down forgiveness, comes with ease. Not when we are talking about something as impactful as alienation. Or, for instance, next to that, I would say maybe if somebody got hurt, like for life, maybe murdered, paralyzed, the victim of this has been affected for the rest of their life. These kinds of offenses, there is a lot of self-work that we must do before we can choose forgiveness. Because let's face it, what has happened if you are listening to this and your children are not home with you, or your relationship with your child has been affected as a result of the actions of somebody else? It's not okay. Nothing on the planet could convince me that what a person does to alienate a child is justifiable. It's not. So, of course you're upset. Of course you're angry. And of course you want to hold on to resentment. It feels protective. It feels necessary. It is normal to be feeling bitter and angry about what has happened. And in order to move on with your life fully and not have it tagging along, forgiveness is the only way to be free of them. And that is the maddening truth of it. I can remember being back in as a hermit up on the hill, the house on the hill, feeling shackled to the personal hell that I felt like they put me in. They meaning my daughter's father and stepmother. I felt so resentful, so bitter, so angry, so powerless, so helpless, so chained to them, to the story that they cast on me. This is my thinking back then. They created this life for me, this personal hell for me, that I would never be able to emerge from. I'm sure I've explained it to you many times in the distant past, that I felt like I was in the bottom of a pit or a well with no exit doors, windows, nothing to climb up. I felt like I was stuck in this dark, ugly, hopeless, evil place. I think I also shared with you that I expected them to somehow miraculously come knocking on my door and tell me they were sorry and that everything was going to be okay and that we would work it out. Once they realized that I was not the person that they were saying that I was, things would be fine. And saying it now, not only does it sound absolutely absurd, right? I also now see how much I was seeking their approval from that spot, that I was really, really yearning for their approval. Now, like saying it, it's just now becoming evident to me. I feel bad for me. I have so much compassion for that version of me that I was hurting so much. And I was seeking, yearning for something that I was never going to get from these people who were alienating my child from me, making these false claims, all of these terrible, dishonest, in my eyes at the time, heartless, evil things. The stepmom had stolen my child from me. She had single white female me, Him That Rocks the Cradle, Lifetime original movie. That is the story that I entertained, embellished, and lived in, surrounded myself in. And so long as I stayed in that angry place, I've been using this word a lot, but I was tethering myself to them. That hold that they had on me, I was holding on to that chain just as tightly. The resentment I felt towards the both of them required me to spend so much energy. I spent so much time and energy on this obsessive anger that I had towards them. That mindset that I created and lived in back then victimized me far longer than needed to be. Back then, I would not have realized that. I thought it was not an option for me to not obsess. Like I thought, of course, I'm obsessing about this. This is my child. There's no other way to be. There is no other state of mind to choose. I felt that it was very necessary to feed and to sit in that resentment that I held for them, that anger that I felt for them, that envy that I felt towards them. I found it so interesting. I forgot about this and just till just now that Brene Brown came out maybe a year or so ago with, I forget who she was being interviewed by, but she was talking about how resentment is actually, she learned it from a fellow researcher of hers that studied emotions, that resentment actually stems from envy and is not at all in the family of anger. Isn't that interesting? That when we resent something, it's because we're envious of it. We want that thing. And that actually makes a lot of sense when we look at the story that we're going through, right? Of course, we want our children back. They've taken them from us. And so resentment is the appropriate emotion or the appropriate experience of that, is the perfect depiction of it. They have what we want. They've taken it from us and they have assumed our role. Even if there's not a step parent active in your child's life, the other parent has assumed both the mom and dad role, right? And erased or is attempting to erase you from your child's life. Back to the message that I got from my former attorney. This is what got me thinking about forgiveness. Is that what I knew from family systems therapy and family systems theory was really from Venusian and Craig Childress and other doctors that have done a lot of the work. I think Venusian was, I don't know, like in the 70s or something. Back in 1935, there was already studies and research being done on this cross-generational coalition of triangulating the child in on a divorcing or separating marriage, right? And so then the child is brought in to act as the other adult in the relationship. It got me thinking that the reason why people triangulate is because of basically their low self-esteem, because of their inability to feel confident without the praise or affection, the reassurance of somebody else. And so whether it's borderline or narcissistic personality type that is alienating your child from you, because they need that so much, that's when they pull the child in so as to feel like they have somebody on their team. This is their maladaptive way, and I'm sure you guys all know this, but this is their way of dealing with the loss that they cannot deal with when you guys split. And if it's a step parent doing it, it's their maladaptive way of feeling like they are a part of this new family of theirs. Erasing you is very convenient for them, but also it fills the void that they have in their being, because they don't accept themselves. And so when I was remembering all this, it reminded me of forgiveness, because the only way that we can ever forgive somebody is to first realize their humanness, to first understand that they got here somehow. They were not born evil, nefarious, or bad, with a bad egg. It doesn't happen that way. And I remind my clients of this all the time. They too, at one point, were infants. And because of whatever happened along their way and the stories that they hold in their minds about the way the world works, this is how they came to doing whatever they've done as far as alienating you. they feel inadequate. They feel devalued and discarded by somebody in their life. And so they have responded by doing the very same with us and maybe many others in their life. And I don't say that to fuel your fire or to judge. I'm saying this because I think in our process to healing, it's so important to understand the anger that we hold, the resentment that we hold, and why we hold it. And so being able to say it, name it, call it out, it is an essential part of your journey to forgiveness, your walk to forgiveness. I was listening to something yesterday or the day before that we can never forgive for some concept. Let's say dad left your family early. They left and got married to somebody else and you never saw dad again. You can't forgive dad for leaving your mom. You will never have like a completion there. But instead, what you can do is forgive dad for how you felt when he left. You can forgive dad for the way Christmases were to follow, the way that mom maybe took things out on you as a result of not having an outlet. You can forgive dad for the times when you went to school with no food, no lunches, because mom didn't have the money to pay. The ways that that affected you, that's what your work to forgiveness. You can't just forgive for some concept because it doesn't actually go in and cause you to draw out what your repercussions were. So when you instead can, same with alienation, name what it is that really truly affected you, then you're off to a good start with finding your own healing. If you are angry about everything they do just because they're them, because they're assholes, because they alienated my child and they're bad and they're wrong and they are evil and they lie. See how bad they are? See, they're lying to somebody else. And you find all the external reasons, you can never come to a healthy place for being able to acknowledge how it has truly affected you. Does that make sense? So you have to get very specific about what you are mourning, what you are grieving as a result of the actions that they have taken and continue to take maybe. And as always, I think it's very important that you do this work knowing that you are supported. Like if you need to go back to therapy, please do it. If you need people around you while you're addressing your own anger and issues, please do. Surround yourself with people that you love and that love you while you're doing this work. But it doesn't have to take very long. This is not something that you need to sit on and ponder and go back over and feel the pain of how they wronged you. No, it's simply acknowledging that this is what's been affected as a result of their actions. So I wanted to share with you the two major things that I always came back to when I was doing this work, and that I still continue to do this work, and when I still continue to do it. The two things that really were affected was the fact that I was grieving and am still grieving the loss of the time. I know that you guys share that with me. We grieve all of this time that we cannot get back with our children, all of the memories that we wanted to live out with them, the loss of witnessing and being present for these milestones in their lives. For me, it was graduating elementary school, moving to middle school for her. And then, of course, going up to the big leagues into high school. Her driver's license was huge. These are just the more recent ones now. Of course, her driver's license, she's a junior in high school, prom, her first kiss. I don't know if moms ever know that. Her first real crush, like little insignificant moments that you have over after dinner, like horsing around in the kitchen or before bedtime, just to be there and listen when they tell you what's going wrong with their day, with school, with whatever. I think about those moments often. I grieve also, I grieve for her loss, the possibility that she is there wondering whether I'm thinking about her, Does she think that I'm not thinking about her? Because, that's the farthest thing from the truth. I think about her all the time. And so that's one way that it has affected me. And there's so many tiny little ways within that, right? And the other thing that it's affected, the other area that's affected, is that their continued efforts to alienate, erase, and replace me, I felt put me in a box and reduced me, marginalized me as a woman, as a mom, as a human. I felt like their decision, I still do feel that their decisions to act in the way they did, it affected my entire life, how I showed up in every way. And now I have to take ownership for a lot of that. And I do. But let's face it, without their desire to alienate, life would be much different than what it is, right? And so I had to be very frank with myself about that their decision and then ongoing decisions afterwards to continue to alienate me affected the way that I moved through my life. I mean, all the way down to what I do for a living today. And so with each intimate relationship I have, starting from when this happened way back when, all the way for probably the rest of my life, I believe this will be something that I do share with people. Today, I choose to have it empower me, but without their actions, I wouldn't be here. So I think it was very important for me to acknowledge that. I was mad at them, and still am sometimes, because of the lifelong effect that their actions, their decisions have cost me. And those two things really affected me. I mean, obviously. And as a result, I deemed them as evil and bad and sinister, all powerful in a not good way, that they were manipulative and all of the things that I'm sure that you guys would, agree upon about your alienating parties. But then I realized that I was doing the very thing that I was hating on them for. I was unwilling to see that they are just as human as me. That in order for a person to alienate, that they have to be hurting. They have to feel devalued, unsupported, self-conscious. So I realized that actually my anger, my resentment, my bitterness, my desire and my need, so I thought, to hate them, judge them, and to belittle them, even though I was desperately trying to get away from them, my thinking about them kept me holding on so tightly to them, my claws wrapped around the both of them. That thought pissed me off. That the idea that maybe, just maybe, I could have freed myself from this jail long ago, and my resistance to letting go, my indignation, victimization, my desire to be better, all in the name of a morally acceptable sort of vengeance on them, all of that was keeping me stuck in a cell with them. I read a lot of emails from y'all. Some of y'all feel so attached to their narrative, to their fight. And that, my friends, I just want to let you know, is optional. You don't have to fight. You do not have to battle, even if you're going to court. Instead, you advocate for yourself and for your children. When we are in resistance to them, we are the ones that feel that resistance. So when I realized that my thinking, my anger, my righteousness, my desire to rise above, to be the one that acts better, the one that takes the high road, that commitment to staying there was actually what was keeping me tethered to them. That was my motivation to release them. And that's what forgiveness is, you guys. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's not about allowing or laying down and taking what they've done. It's not about condoning conforming, forgiving them releases them from your headspace, from your energy, so that you can move on with your life. When you are committed to not forgiving, you'll find that your innovation, your creativity, all of the things that make you you are dulled. The second that you begin to release your hold on your anger, all of that starts to come back to you. And I think that that is so important for you guys. That's why I want it for you. Like I said, I'm still working on it. I'm still working on it. A lot of it is letting go of your ideas about what is right and what is wrong and what you should have gotten and what you have. Our ideas about what is owed to us, what we feel entitled to as parents, as humans, as good people. The sense of importance that we all have is oftentimes what will get us into trouble and cause us to go right back into resistance. This shouldn't be this way. They shouldn't act this way. My life should be different. They should be different. I should be treated better. All of that. And again, I want to make clear that I am not suggesting that what they have done and what they're doing is acceptable or right. It is not. What they have done is absolutely not acceptable. It's wrong. And you can state that without holding on to the indignation, feeling shackled by the resentment and the envy, the hate. I do want to reiterate that if anger is where you are today, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with any of the emotions that you're feeling. As you've heard me say before, your emotions are nothing to solve for. It's just, I believe it's always much more helpful to recognize where the emotions are coming from. It moves you, it saves you so much time and energy in the long run to call it out, as opposed to entertaining all of the egoic sort of thoughts that happen around the suffering, whatever. If you're mad, they took time from you, they made decisions that have affected you and, will affect you, be mad about it. Say that. What really helped me in the whole forgiveness of others, I really needed to forgive myself too. I didn't want to, and I've talked with you guys a lot about this, but I thought that by admitting any of my fault or plain old stupidness in the moment, I thought that if I admitted that even to myself, then I was taking on the blame. And it's not the case. By admitting it, acknowledging, recognizing where you were wrong, you were also able to release yourself from the blame in that process too. Chances are that the resentment that you are holding on to with people that are alienating your kids from you, it's not the first time that you have felt singled out, devalued, discarded, and all of that, right? We talk about that in the self-erasing episode. So also addressing that, this probably runs deep. Yes, the alienating parent has done a number on it. They have worn it all out, but it probably also happened earlier on in childhood with you. So exploring that while you're at it would probably save you some time and effort too, right? Where has this shown up before for me so that I don't repeat it again for myself, right? Not the alienation part, but just the emotions of feeling devalued, erased, not enough, all of that. When you're able to humanize them and understand that the reason that they're doing this is not because they're sinister or straight up evil or the devil incarnate or whatever it is story that you have about them, when you step away from the judgment from a place of hurt people, a person that would triangulate a child and adultify them, parentify them, is hurting. They clearly felt all of the ways that they are trying to make you feel today. And that is why they felt marginalized. They felt singled out, ashamed, embarrassed. This is really what is driving them. So when you can have some compassion, and I know this is not an easy step, but when you are ready, when you become open to seeing how this might be true for them, then you're one step closer to forgiving them. Like I said, this is an essential step in freeing yourself from them, from the narrative that you might still share with them. So if you want to free yourself from that hell, this is the way to go. Find forgiveness for what they've done, for what they continue to do. One last thought, though, is that it's common for us to hold on to our resentment because it's doing something for us. It helps us to feel like we have a cause, that there's a reason, and they're to blame for why we are here without our children. If we don't, just like I was talking about in a couple episodes ago, as far as our holding on to the pain as mistaking that for connection, if we don't hold on to our resentment, then how do we explain why we're sitting here without our children with us, right? How do we say that, iterate that to those we just meet, relationships we're in or will have in the future? How do we explain how we have a kid who's still in school and they're not at home with us? It becomes easier once your kids are adult age, but still inside, whatever story you're telling you about that, I'm just offering you a way to freedom here. If you're telling yourself that you need to hold on to this resentment in order to make you feel righteous, justified about all of what has happened up until now, that is not true freedom. It's conditional. And so I just want to offer that instead of holding on to that painful story, release it. And once you accept you, then others will too. So sometimes we hold on to it because it helps us to feel like we have a cause. Another reason we hold on to the resentment is because, again, is that maybe it helps us to feel connected to our children. Because if we're not angry at our abuser, then we're doing them dirty, you know? Without the anger, then we're left with this story of how we're estranged from our children. And we fear that, right? We don't want to be the ones at fault for all of this. So if we have someone to blame, somebody to point at, it's all because of them. My life has become this disaster because of what they did to me. Well, you continue to put yourself in that box that you're so mad at them for putting you in, you know? So again, this is your opportunity. You don't need anything more to explain where you've been. But in order to get somewhere different, in order to climb higher, you must release yourself from this chain. And then, of course, the other reason that we hold on to resentment, which I've kind of hinted at this whole time, we do it because we fear the discomfort of having to change for our own selves. If we have to acknowledge that maybe we're at fault and it wasn't all the enemy, then we have work to do. Then there's the possibility of us feeling more guilty and that we've got penance to pay or something like that ahead of us. And that's just, it's not the case at all, right? This is actually a step closer to your freedom, as I've been saying. So you feeling uncomfortable is part of the process. We feel uncomfortable when we're approaching an unknown territory. And the unknown is absolutely necessary in order for you to get out of where you are and where you've been. You have to go through discomfort in order to get somewhere different, or else you're just going to keep recreating what's already been. And if you feel like you're in jail, like mental, emotional, maybe even physical jail, because of what the alienator did, the only way to free yourself and move out of that jail and into the rest of your life is to let it go, you know, when you're ready, of course. So anyway, yes, forgiveness, it's not as bad as you think. In fact, quite the opposite. It's the most freeing thing you will ever do. But I will tell you too, it is the most difficult process you might ever go through, besides, of course, the pain and the suffering of staying in it. Okay? The benefits are immeasurable, plentiful. It's the gift that keeps on giving to free yourself from the hold of the person that you're hating on so much. And honestly, the biggest benefit I think that you can get from that is that forgiving is the only way to stop and complete the cycle of intergenerational trauma. This is like an unskippable, essential step. If you want to model for your child coming from a place of unconditional love, you have to forgive yourself and forgive the perpetrator. The only way out of it is through it. So if you're not there, please don't beat yourself up. It's okay. I think anger is like an essential part of your healing, right? Feeling like a victim is an essential part of your healing. Feeling resentment, an essential part of your healing. There's nothing wrong with where you are currently, okay? And if you know you've had enough, if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, then forgiveness is always available to you. And luckily, it doesn't require any participation by them. In fact, that's the great thing about it, is once and for all, it requires nothing from them. When we stay in resentment, it's because we're wanting them to right their wrong. We're wanting them to apologize, to stop being the way that they are. They're not going to stop being the way that they are. You know this by now, right? Let it go. And you don't need anything from them. You can actually break the tie that you feel like they have around you. You can release yourself from it. Will you forgive? Okay, guys. Take care.